Yeah, I am still your teacher. This is Teacher Ospat Nuarinda. Now, in the previous video, we were talking about the importance of glycolysis as a process. However, in the other previous video, we were able to see that when glycolysis takes place as one of the stages, when it takes place, one of the products it forms finally is pyruvate. Now, we are asking ourselves in this episode that what happens to this pyruvate when the pyruvate is formed? What comes next? That's what we have come to address in this episode here. Come with me. Now, we are saying when we talk about fate of pyruvate, this is the same as asking that what happens, this fate is like the consequences, what happens to this pyruvate after it has been formed. Now, we are saying if I have pyruvate here, I have pyruvate which has been formed here. This is my pyruvate. Now we are saying this pyruvate, its fate depends on something. And what is that? This pyruvate, its fate will depend on, maybe I can say one factor. And what is this factor? Maybe I can reduce this. Let me reduce it like this. We are saying this pyruvate, its fate will depend on, I can call it one factor. And what is that factor? I'm saying pyruvate, its fate depends. And we are saying depends on what? The fate of pyruvate depends on, maybe I may call it one factor. And that one factor is what? It depends on whether oxygen is present or it is absent. It depends on, here the pyruvate depends on whether oxygen is present or if oxygen is absent. So we are saying after glycolysis has taken place and we have formed our pyruvate. Now what happens to this pyruvate will depend on whether oxygen is present or it is absent. And what's that? We are saying, for example, when oxygen is present, then something takes place. When oxygen is present, for example, this oxygen, this pyruvate, our 3 carbon molecule, this pyruvate, if oxygen is present, then we are saying then the pyruvate moves from where? Where is the pyruvate produced? The pyruvate is produced where? It is produced within the cytoplasm. Of course, glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm. So when oxygen is present, that pyruvate is able to move from the cytoplasm where it is produced and it goes into the mitochondrion. And this mitochondrion, it goes specifically into the matrix of the mitochondrion. All together? So the pyruvate moves from the cytoplasm, and it goes into the matrix, of the mitochondrion, into the matrix of mitochondrion. Now after it has reached there, on reaching there, now this pyruvate after reaching into the matrix of the mitochondrion, on reaching there, the pyruvate, this pyruvate now undergoes the second stage, and that stage, the second stage of respiration, and that second stage is what we refer to as Krebs what? Is what we refer to as Krebs what? Krebs cycle. Is what we refer to as Krebs cycle. So that's what happens. In fact, that's now the influence of oxygen, and whatever will be following here is what we will be referring to as aerobic respiration. Remember, from the start I told you respiration in general was divided into two types. We had what we call internal respiration, which we have been talking about, and we had what we call external respiration. Now, external respiration, we call it breathing. Now, internal respiration is what we have been talking about, where food is being broken down. It's what we have been talking about in most of these episodes, and it's what we are going to continue to talk about. However, we shall realize that this internal respiration is what actually is divided into aerobic and anaerobic. In most cases, when they ask people that give us the two types of respiration, most people usually rush very fast to say we have aerobic and anaerobic, but that's not true. Those aerobic and anaerobic respiration are the types of internal respiration. They are types of cellular respiration, but the types of respiration in broader terms is internal and external. So under internal respiration or cellular respiration, that's why we have the likes of that's why we have the likes of aerobic and anaerobic. So when it comes into anaerobic and aerobic, we are saying for anaerobic respiration, that's why we don't have oxygen. That's when oxygen is not present. And that's what we are going to talk about here. Now, for aerobic respiration, remember we said in the previous video that glycolysis is the foundation of the rest of the stages in what? In respiration. So when oxygen is present, we shall begin with the glycolysis first. We shall still begin with the glycolysis, and this glycolysis is going to give us what? Is going to give us pyruvate. Then, because oxygen is present, now that pyruvate which is formed will now be able to progress and enter into the mitochondria, into the mitochondrion, and from there it will go straight to the matrix and to undergo another second stage. And then after, the other stage will also continue. The other stage will also continue. And that stage that will happen next will be what we call the Krebs cycle. Now, what happens when oxygen is absent? Now, what happens when oxygen is absent? This is what happens exactly. So when oxygen is absent, what happens to the pyruvate? Now, the pyruvate does not go anywhere, but rather it remains within the cytoplasm where it was produced. It remains within. So here we are saying the pyruvate. In this case, the pyruvate remains where? Remains in the Remains in the cytoplasm. And then what happens to it? Now, once it remains in the cytoplasm, what happens to it? So after this pyruvate has remained in the cytoplasm, it doesn't just remain there when it is redundant. No. When it has remained within the cytoplasm, it will undergo. Now, that's what we shall actually be referring to as anaerobic respiration. Now, what happens to this pyruvate after it has remained within the cytoplasm is what we are talking about in the next episode. Please come with me.